All right, well, hopefully you're enjoying your snow day, but doesn't mean that we can't learn a little something today. So, what I'm going to do is talk about compound statements, and if you know what a compound sentence is, then this should be able to, should be able to figure this out pretty good. So, talking about compound statements, and then we are going to determine if it is true or false and explain what makes it true or false. And then I'm going to show you how to do some truth tables, true-false tables. So with this video, one thing that you want to make sure that you do is definitely, number one, listen to it. Take some notes if you need to. Stop, rewind it, do whatever you need to do so that you can understand it and you can complete the assignment to go along with it. So first of all, let's talk about a statement. So a statement is any sentence that can be stated as either true, false. It cannot be both of them. So here I have three statements that I've written down. I have statement P, which says supplementary angles have a sum of 180 degrees. And we know that right there, that is a true statement because that's the definition of supplementary angles. And so it's true. Next one, statement Q that I have. Sheboygan is a city in Texas. That is false. So the fact that it is true, it is false and not true means that it's a statement. An octagon has 8 sides. That statement right there is a true statement. So any statement, if I was to say that um, it's snowing outside today, and we can go ahead and say that that's true. So whether I want to say that grass is green, that's a true statement too. So you can make up any statement as long as you can say true or false to it. It's a statement. All right, next I want to talk about what the negation of a statement is. And a negation of a statement is just having the opposite truth value to it. And the notation that we'll use for it is we'll use that little squiggly line that you see. So this little squiggly line right here, that is telling us that we're going to take the negation of statement P. And what that means is we're just going to change it to its opposite form. So on the last example, when we were looking at statement P, I said statement P said that supplementary angles have a sum of 180 degrees. Well, if I want to look at the negation of statement P, which I see right here, I'm saying that supplementary angles do not have a sum of 180 degrees. And what that's doing now is it's changing the truth value to this. So supplementary angles do not have a sum of 180 degrees. That now has turned this into a false statement. It is the opposite. If I were to look at statement Q, back on the previous slide, I said Sheboygan is a city in Texas. Well, we know that that is false, but now if I say Sheboygan is not a city in Texas, that's the negation right there. So Sheboygan is not a city in Texas. We can go ahead and say that that is true. It's the opposite value. Lastly, I have an octagon does not have 8 sides, so does not have 8 sides. Well, an octagon does have 8 sides. So by saying it does not have 8 sides, that is making it a false statement. So that little squiggly mark here takes any statement that's true, turns it to false. If it's false, it turns it to true. It just changes the notion of it. So now that we've talked about what a statement is as well as a negation, now let's talk about what a compound statement is. A compound statement is two or more statements that are joined by the words and or. And you're going to take these two and join them together. So we're going to take a look at two different versions. We're going to talk about what happens when you use the word and, which is a conjunction, or we're going to talk about what happens when you use the word or, which is a disjunction. So a conjunction is when statements are joined by the word and. So for example, here I have two statements. I have statement P, which says a square has 4 right angles, and I have statement Q, which says a square has 4 congruent sides. So if I wanted to write a conjunction between these two, Notice the new notation that I'm using right here, where I have a P with an arrow pointing up and a Q. That arrow that's pointing up right here is representing a conjunction. It's representing the word and. So think about how that almost looks like an A. So I'm saying that I'm going to talk about statement P and statement Q. So now when I look at my statement here, I have a square has 4 right angles and a square has 4 congruent sides. I'm taking those two statements, putting them together using the word and. Now, if I wanted to determine if that statement is true or false, a conjunction can only be true when both statements are true. Now, a square has 4 right angles. That's a true statement. A square also has 4 congruent sides. So the fact that both of these statements right here are true, that means that our conjunction is also going to be true. All right, now looking at what happens when you have a disjunction. So again, compound statement, we're using and or. This time we're going to take the two statements and we're going to put them together with the word or. I have two different statements that I'm looking at this time. I have statement P, which says that triangles have 3 sides. And then I have statement Q, which says that squares have 9 sides. I have a little new notation that I've got here, just kind of similar to the last one, where it's a P and it's an arrow pointing downwards and then a Q. That little notation right there, the arrow that's pointing down, is representing the word or. So I'm taking P or Q. So now I take my two statements. I have triangles have 3 sides, or squares have 9 sides. Now when I look at this, if I talk about an or statement, only one of those statements has to be true in order for the whole thing to be true. So triangles have 3 sides, that is true. Squares have 9 sides, well, that is false. So the fact that I have one true statement and one false statement, overall, the whole statement is going to be true. The only way that it could be false is if both were false. All right, so I'm going to take a look at a couple different examples real quick. I have 3 statements here, P, Q, and R. So statement P says there are 7 days in a week, which I'm going to go ahead and say that's a true statement. And statement Q, March has 30 days. Well, that is a false statement because March has 31 days. And then lastly here, I have Halloween is on October 31st. Okay, that is a true statement. So I'm gonna have us write a couple different options here. And first of all, let's write a conjunction of P. Let's go P and Q. So if I wanted to take these two statements here, I would say there are 7 days in a week. And March has 30 days. Now, with these two statements here, I am taking a conjunction using the word and, based off of my notation here, and I am taking a statement, my first statement is true, my second statement is false. Now, in order for a conjunction to overall be true, both have to be true. So since I have one true and one false, this statement right here overall is false. There are 7 days in a week and March has 30 days. That is a false statement. Okay. All right, let's try another one. This time I'm going to take the conjunction. I'm going to use a conjunction, or actually a disjunction of a negation. So I'm going to take statement Q with a disjunction of the negation of R. So I'm going to take statement Q, March has 30 days. And then I have to use or Halloween is, now I'm doing the disjunction, so Halloween is not on October 31st. All right, so March has 31 days right there. That is a false statement. And Halloween is not on October 31st. That is also a false statement. So now, because I'm dealing with two false statements and it's an or, I am looking at an overall false statement between these two. All right, let's just do one more real quick. I'm going to do another negation with a conjunction. So let's go ahead and we're going to take not P and, let's just do two of these, and not Q. So the negation of P and the negation of Q. So I can start out with the statement P. There are 7 days in a week. Well, I want to do the negation. So there are not 7 days in a week. I'm going to join that statement using the word and now the negation of statement Q, and March does not have 30 days. So statement 1 here, the negation of P, there are not 7 days in a week. That is a false statement. Then I take a look at March does not have 30 days. That right there is a true statement. Now, if I look at here, I'm trying to do the conjunction between the two of them. It has to be an and. Since one is false and one is true, the whole statement is going to be false. All right, so now this leads us to working with truth tables, which is a convenient way for us to organize truth values and kind of also to look at all the different options. Now, I gave you in class yesterday a white piece of paper. You're going to find that some of the tables that I go over here are on that piece of paper. It's just kind of a nice way to have it all done for you, and so hopefully it is a little bit easier to fill in. So up at the top, you'll see these three tables, which are looking at the three things that we just talked about: a negation, a conjunction, and disjunction. And we're just going to be looking at all the different possibilities. So when we talk about a negation and we just work with one statement, so statement P has two options. It could be true or it can be false. And so when I look at the negation of P, if it's true, the negation of that's false. The negation of false then is true. It's just creating the opposite effect. Now, when you take a look at a conjunction or a disjunction, you'll see that there are more rows that we can put into here. And with those rows, you just want to list all the different possibilities between the two statements. So we can have statement P be true. We can also have statement Q be true. That's one option. We could have statement P be true, but statement Q could be false. We could have statement P be false and statement Q be true. Or lastly, you could have P be false as well as Q be false. So you have 4 different options with working with those two statements. Now, working with the conjunction between the two, that's referring to the and. And the only way that a conjunction can be true is if the two functions are both true. So if P is true and Q is true, then the whole function or the whole conjunction is true. If I have a true and false, then it's false. If I have a false true, it's false. If I have a false false, it's false. So there's only one way that it could be true. Disjunction with two statements, again, we have the different options: true true, true false, false true, and false false. This time we're looking at the or statement between them. And so in order to be true, one or the other or both need to be true. So if P or Q is true, then the whole statement is true. If P is true but Q is false, we have at least one true value, so the whole thing is true. False or true, we have one true, so the statement's true. False or false, then the answer should be false. Now we're going to expand these truth tables, and as you do this, a couple tips for you. Number one, you want to make sure that you include columns for each statement. We were looking at examples of having two statements, P and Q, but there's a chance you could have additional ones. Then you want to include any columns for any negations that might exist. And then lastly, you are going to include columns for the compound statements. So here's our first one that we're going to look at, where we take P, this is a disjunction, so P or the negation of R. So the first thing that I'm going to look for here is how many letters of the alphabet do I have? How many statements are we looking for? And I have two of them. I have statement P and I have statement R. Those are the two that we're looking for. So that means that we have four different options that are going to exist. True, 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 false, false, true, or false, false. Doesn't matter the order that you put these in, but there are four different combinations. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take any negations that there are. And here we have the negation of R. So I'm going to take my column of R right here, and I'm going to take all those values, I'm going to take the negation of them. So I'm going to take our true value here, and now it's false. Here I'm going to take false, that's going to become true. True becomes false, false becomes true. My last and final column that's going to be here is going to be our entire compound statement, which is the disjunction of P and the negation of R. So the two columns that I'm going to look at are statement P as well as the negation of R, and I'm looking at the or between the two of them. So one or both have to be true in order for the statement to be true. So if I have a true and a false, there's at least one true, so the whole statement's true. True, true, the statement's true. False, false, the answer's false. False, true, the answer is true. And so right here, you should have 3 trues and 1 false with your truth table. Okay, let's try a different one here. I have the negation of P and the conjunction of statement Q. So once again, how many letters of the alphabet do we have? We've got P and we have Q, so we have 2 statements. That means we have 4 different options. We've got true, 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 false, false, true, and false, false. Next column, I'm going to take the negation first, and I see there's a negation of P. So we're going to take the negation of P. I'm going to take that first column that I see and negate every single one of those. So here's true, this is going to be false. This is true, this is false. Here's a false, this is going to be true. False and true. Now what I can do is in my last column here, I can do the conjunction of them, the negation of P and Q, which means that we're going to take the negation of P, which is this column here, as well as the negation of Q, and we're going to look at the compound statement between the two, so we are looking at and. The only way it can be true is if both are true. So I have a true false, that means the statement is false. False false is false. True true is true, and a false true is false. So we have 1 true and we have 3 falses. So now hopefully you're kind of seeing what's happening with 2 statements. What we're going to do is if you were, actually I'm just kind of looking ahead here. What I think I'd like you to try and do real quick is if you look at the next one that's on your paper. So we did 1 and we did 2. What I'd like you to do is look at number 3. And I want you to pause the video and try and see if you can do number 3 on your own. And then once you got it, then start the video back up. All right, so here's the answer to number 3. Taking a look at that one, you should have 3 trues and 1 false in that final column that's there. All right, next I'd like you to look at number 4. And again, I'd like you to try and see if you can pause the video and see if you can fill this one out on your own. All right, so you'll notice that there was an extra column that was added in this one, and that's just because you're working with 2 different negations that are there. So I have statement P, I have statement R, I have the negation of P, I have the negation of R, followed by the compound statement between the 2 of them. And so we should end up with 3 falses and a true. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn the page, and we're going to take a look at number 6. And you'll notice that in this one here, I actually have more than 2 statements, and you'll notice that the table is much larger. That's because with there being more than 2 statements, we have a lot more options. So starting out with, I see 3 letters of the alphabet. So I've got statement P, I have Q, and I have R. Now, there's a lot more options that we can do here. We can have a true, true, and a true. All 3 statements could be true. I could have the first 2 statements be true and the third statement be false. I could have the first be true, the second be false, and the third be true. I could have a false, true, false. I could have a false, false, and a true. And I'm just kind of getting out of my pattern here. We could have, let's see, I got false, false, true. I've got false, true, false. Which one am I missing here? Do I have, I could do a true, false, false, and I could do a false, true, true, as well as a false, false, false. So there are a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different possibilities with 3 of these statements. Now, I don't have any negations or anything that are up above, but I do have a set of parentheses. And we're going to treat our table here, treat those parentheses kind of like order of operations, meaning I need to take statement Q and statement R and see what's happening between those 2. So I'm going to take Q and R. I'm going to take the second and the third column right here and look to see where do I have 2 trues. So true, true, so this statement's true. True, false means false. False, true means false. True, false means false. False, true means false. False, false is a false. True, true is a true. And false, false is a false. So that takes care of Q and R. Now I need to combine the whole thing here, where we're taking P and the disjunction of Q and R. So now the columns that we're going to look for is I'm going to take statement P, which is our first column, along with column 4 here, and I'm going to look at the disjunction between the 2 of them. So I need to have at least 1 true to say that the whole thing is true. True, true, so it's true. True, false, it's true. True, false, it's true. False, false, it's false. False, false, another false. True, false is true. False, true is true. False, false is false. So we should end up with 3 falses, and the remaining 5 are going to be true. There's a couple additional ones, 7 and 8, that are on the practice. If you want to try those, you're more than welcome to. But I do hope that now that after you've seen that, you can go ahead and do your best at practicing the assignment. So otherwise, enjoy your snow day. If you get outside, be safe. But otherwise, I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Don't forget to do your assignment.